Hi, this is Melanie, and you're listening to Tailspin. This episode is How I Made It from January. On the second Friday of every month, Made by Millworks in downtown Long Beach hosts a storytelling event called How I Made It. At the event, people share stories behind their small business ideas, their art, their poetry, photography, anything. The event is hosted and curated by Sarah Tatro. This episode includes Boris Ingles, who shares his photography, me, sharing the beginning of Tailspin, Clifton Snyder, talking about his book, The Beetle Bump, and a poem by Murray Thomas. There's also music by Melissa Lussier. Enjoy.
I didn't know how to start this. And I was like, okay, well, I was going to write some stuff and then talk about it. And I was like, well, I don't want to come up here and read what I'm going to say to you guys and how I got here and how I took these pictures. So I'm going to speak from the heart and tell you how actually I arrived to get into photography. And I don't talk about this, but it's who I am. And the truth is, how I got here with photography is I stopped drinking and I stopped using, because for a very long time that's what I did. And the minute I stopped doing all that stuff, there was something else in me that just, I started taking, let me back up. I stopped drinking and I stopped using, and I checked myself into this place. And once I reached about, my third week of sobriety is when I started writing poetry, is when I got back into poetry. And I remember writing a few poems about where I'm from. And where I'm from, I grew up in Boyle Heights. So I started writing poetry about that. And the first poem, 'cause I would write haikus, but then I wanted to write something else. And I'm going to read you what I wrote. This is called Under 6th Street Bridge. Walking through hallways of quiet graffiti, pitching stones into murky glass, watching trains trek over shit-infested yards. I come across a gutter bug wandering alone along the bank. He greets me with muted eyes and a broken smile, then asks for loose change pointing down to the river. The hipsters have gone together to make a film about their hipster ways and hipster lives. He grunts and mumbles a few vexing words, picks up a few cans, then walks away, shuffling his feet along the rails over a chain-link fence into a small community of tents, tarps, and tramps. So, thank you. All right, so these are the two pictures when I wrote that poem that were in my head. And most of my poetry, I have images when I'm writing. I try to create an image for you guys, for the audience. And I started taking these pictures and wanting to create, some sort of canvas in my house of where I'm from. It's important for me to know where I'm from and how far I've come along. And from there, I started shooting stuff like the downtown stuff, like the city hall. And I just kept, trying new things. I didn't just stay stuck in Boyle Heights. I wanted to explore new things. So I started shooting different things. And let's see. I got into shooting homeless people. There's something about their face, and there's always a story behind them. And these right here, these are two pictures I shot. This guy is shot in Skid Row. I was taking pictures up there, and this guy he looks at me and he's like, "Hey man, you take your LA time, paparazzi?" And I go, "No, I'm just shooting pictures." And he's like, "Well, he stops and he looks at me, and he was carrying these jeans, and he just chucks them into the trash can, and then looks at me and he just kind of poses, and I just snapped right there. And a lot of times, it's good to know your camera and all the little features and all the stuff, but a lot of times it's just luck and timing, One thing that had I not stopped doing all this stuff, none of this would have happened for me. Meeting good people, getting my stuff out there with poetry, getting my stuff out there with photography, it wouldn't have happened. It really wouldn't. And I'm getting some of these stuff. Pictures are being published with Sarah, and 2 of them came out in Incandescent Mind, the first anthology, and 4 of these are coming on the second anthology. And I'm a little nervous up here. I never read. Usually when I come up here, I read poetry, and I never really speak to people. I'm gonna start imagining you guys naked over here. Now the wife's gonna get mad back there. All right. I want to thank you guys for letting me tell you a little bit about myself. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you guys for coming.
Thank you, Boris. You did great. Let's give Boris another round of applause. And thank you for sharing not only your work, but sharing your story. I think that's really important to do that. And I think that the more that we have the courage to share our stories, however they are, if they're vulnerable or difficult or whatever, it gives other people permission to share their stories.
My name's Melanie. I produce a podcast, a storytelling podcast that's mostly local called Tailspin. I have business cards and everything. And this is, I can't believe how happy it makes me. It's just, I can't believe I found something that is inclusive of all the things I love, which is people and writing and talking and parties and socializing. And every time I have someone in my little studio who trusts me enough to just sit and talk about whatever, I think, I can't believe I get to do this. So this is how Tailspin came to be. This is how I made it. And, I'm a gut dumper, so this is the splash zone. Let me tell you. So there's like a million little anecdotes that brought me here, and each one is fascinating, I assure you. The one I'm going to go with tonight was the very beginning, which was 2011. My son was stillborn at 8.5 months, and I'd never experienced that kind of grief before. And at that time, and now looking back at it, the only thing I could say was, I'm not even a person. That's all I could say. How are you doing? I'm not even a person. I'm this thing. And if you've ever grieved, you know how much it fucks up your brain, right? It's its own thing. And every taboo claims to be the last taboo, but it turns out dead babies are really the last taboo. So there's only a few people who can handle facing you after something like that. And I realized what that was when about 6 weeks later, my husband seriously injured himself, and there was this flood of support and phone calls. And it was really interesting to me, like, well, it was interesting. And the more I sat with my grief, and that kind of, leveled, I was just leveled. I went to the grocery store right next to my house, and I remember this plain as day, and it's one of those moments that doesn't stick out to anybody, but it's just that it's timing, right? I was at the grocery store in my not being a person state, and the guy standing behind me in line, in no real descriptive manner, just looked over at me. And I was like, oh, maybe I am a person. The fact that I earned someone's gaze when I didn't feel like I existed anymore was like, okay. So I sat with that for a while, and I realized that all these things that you expect to feel, like grief and anger, but along with that I had shame. And I remember leaving the grocery store all of a sudden with this new awareness, which was that I really am on the planet with all you other people. I was walking to my house, and I could feel my body was this hunched over, sad thing. And I sat with it, and I thought, that's shame. Well, fuck that. I have to sit with all this other stuff. But why am I feeling shame? So I was on Facebook one day, and out of the billions of ads and shares and likes or whatever, I saw this group that was called Fourth Trimester Bodies. And it was for women who had children of any age, posing in black underwear of their choosing with their children or their babies, and just a way of saying, well, this is really what bodies look like. And I had never done anything like that before, and I was still very much in this shamed thing, and I thought, I'm going to do that because I don't know what else to do. I did that, and I did roller derby. That's all I could come up with. So I asked my daughter if she would do it with me. She was 4 at the time, and she's all about being in front of the camera. And I dug out my son's footprints that the hospital took, and it was horrible to look at. And one of the reasons it was horrible to look at is because the hospital had written at the top. Even the nurses won't look at you when you go through something like this. And they had written at the top, baby boy. Now at 8.5 months, I had chosen a name. His name was Holden. And no one had bothered to ask me if he had a name because they felt uncomfortable. So I dug out the footprints anyway. I cut that part off. I knew who he was. And my husband, who supports every crazy thing I do, yay, and my daughter and I drove down to San Diego because this woman who was shooting these photos was actually from Chicago, and she was doing pinup work, and then she realized that this was her calling. So she was traveling all over the U.S., staying with people who volunteered, taking donations, trying to work this thing. So I drove down to San Diego, and I met her in a hotel room with black underwear on. It was this crazy thing, and I went in there, and they did my hair and makeup, and I came out looking like a newscaster, and I got to talking to her, and she had twins, and one of the twins had passed away at birth. So we shared this experience, and she had told me that in all the medical stuff, it was always twin A and twin B died, and she'd kind of had that similar experience. And she had taken that pain and turned it into this thing, this really beautiful thing. So I took Holden's footprints, and I framed them, and I took my daughter, and we shot this really beautiful photo that I'm very proud of. It came out in this big bound coffee table book. And it was after that I realized the power in telling your story, because I've been through the situation where you walk into a room and you hear someone saying, that's the one. But if you just talk about it, you own it. And no one gets to talk about you. And no one gets to label you. And one of the amazing things about this is I get to meet all these really wonderful people. And I met this woman who has her own podcast about her own situation, and she had struggled with mental illness and homelessness and addiction, which are things that my family's experienced as well. And she was telling me, well, I'm mentally ill, and it took me a long time to realize I need my meds and blah, blah, blah. And as I got to know her better, I was like, wow, she's crazy. But then I was like, well, yeah, she told you. She told you she was crazy. It wasn't even anything I could throw at her because she owned it. So I decided I want to own it. And I want to help other people own it. And I really think this is it, that this small level human connection is the way to do it. And then to branch it out from there. And that's why I do this. So thank you.
You place your dark hands inside the songs drinking from my skin. You whisper, paralyze, revives the wounds, then we begin. You promise morning doves with their somber cruise of rain, and winter's blue friend days asking me to sing my spring. I am breathing ancient breath, dream weaving the wind, suturing the jagged seams, listening. Mugs of tea, paper leaves, turning colors in time. Eyelids begging, but sleep won't let me fall until I've bled. See, I can't go out to say, is it blood or is it arts? But let us drink the sacred wine. Not even death will do us parts. Not even death will do us part. I am breathing ancient breath, dream weaving the wind. I'm so dream the jagged seams, listening.
Thank you so much.
So please welcome Clifton Snyder. And he has finally published a book that he's been working on for 35 years. We decided that he's been working on this book for 35 years. And it's called The Beetle Bump. So it is a collection of poems all about his love of the Beatles. And he's going to tell you more about that.
Thank you, Sarah. Actually, I haven't been working on this for 35 years. I wrote the original version about 35 years ago. And some of the poems were published, but I couldn't find a publisher for the entire manuscript. So I kind of forgot about it. And actually, I explained this in the preface. I've been donating my manuscripts and letters and stuff to the LGBT archives at USC. And I was looking through my boxes, and there was this manuscript called The Beetle Bump, and I thought, oh, well, let me look at that again. And I thought, well, these are not bad. Some of them were not very good, and I've cut those from the book, and I've revised others. What happened was John Lennon was murdered in December of 1980, and there's something about people's deaths, especially people that I admire, that inspires poetry. I'll never forget, I was in a dance club I know the address because it was called 740 Broadway. It's been under different names. And this friend of mine came in and said, somebody shot John Lennon, and, it was a shock. So I don't know how to shorten this. I'm a person who writes out of obsessions, and gradually I became obsessed with the Beatles. Let's put it that way. And my partner at the time was very much into music, and he collected Bowie, which I later did. But I got into collecting the Beatles and writing poems, and I don't even remember the first poem that I wrote. It's probably about John. There's a lot of poems about John Lennon in here. John. Nobody noticed he had eyebrows like Fagin and a nose like Captain Hook. He spread his legs and yelled against a scream of throats. They swarmed to worship him, to suck him joint by joint, to rip apart his body, each particle of mole, of eye, of ear, of tooth, of pubic hair. There's a little known fact about the Beatles in their concerts, and I have a poem about it. People would bring their handicapped relatives. The Beatles called them cripples in those days. It's not very PC anymore. But they'd line up in rows, and then they'd be wheeled to the back of the stage and actually ask that they could touch one of the Beatles for healing. When John Lennon said the Beatles were more popular than Jesus, he wasn't kidding. So here's the healing music. The front row was set apart for them, the half-wits, the blind, the deaf, the paralyzed, brought by their grandparents, their parents, aunts and uncles, sisters and brothers, to hear the healing music, to feel it, to touch its makers, who sang like gods, slammed the drums, beat their feet, plucked their strings, shook their heads, screamed the magic. In the dressing rooms, the relatives wheeled them in. They held out their withered hands, dripping saliva, twisting their heads, showing the whites of their eyes, begging for one touch. All they had was the word in the healing. It's the title poem, The Beatle Bump. And there's a lot of stuff in here that you might not know unless you were also a Beatlemaniac at one time in your life. They started out first in Liverpool, of course, but then Hamburg, Germany, and they had 8-hour gigs and slept in horrible facilities, all of them in the same room. And one of the ways they got through this was taking what were called prellies. It's preludum, which is like a diet pill with speed, in other words. So that's what prellies means. Brian Epstein is the one who discovered them and got them their record contract after everybody else had turned them down. He's in here. And he discovered them through a recording of My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean by Tony Sheridan, and that's why Bonnie is in here. They had a drummer that didn't really fit with the group called Pete Best, and he's in here. And that's enough explaining. The Beatle Bump. Let's all do the Beatle Bump. First we strum a little banjo. Then we wop bop a bebop a lula. Then we pop a lot of prellies. Do a little Bonnie, add a Brian, bump Mr. Best, and fall into a hole. Now we please everybody. We pump promoters, we hump groupies, and we plump for the Queen. We listen to the colors of our movies. We jump to the beat of a psychedelic band. Man, we sure been naughty girls, dripping up the barefoot clown, purple sipping, yellow creeping sounds. So we do the beetle bump. We jump, we stump, we slump, we sit, we search, we never stop. We plump our money bags, we clump our peckers in a pile, then we separate. Oh, stark, flabby beetle prick, oh, moneyed tanker full of shit. Oh, hand me the envelope, please. So we do the beetle bump on a sentimental journey, singing peace in Montreal, singing Bangladesh in Madison Square, cold turkey, back off boogaloo, wings over America, coming up. We bump together, hair down to our toes. We bump apart, we hump until we're hoarse. Then we watch the circles round the bleakness of a dream. Plump, the dream is full. We did the beetle bump. Thank you. Thank you.
So the next song I'm going to play, it's called Religion. And it's interesting because just a day or two ago, I discovered that someone I used to play music with is playing this song and not giving me credit for it. And I mean, anyone who's an artist, I mean, you guys can understand how tough that is. So I wrote the song prior to even, ever having met this person. And so I play this song tonight with conviction. And with an authority that says this is my song. So this song's called Religion, and I wrote it about the ways in which I worship and the way that the universe presents religion to me. So.
Ran to a church to purge myself again, trying to find some meaning, trying to find my worth. I stared at all the people, so white and so insane. They ran out the back door and let the city's lips take me. I need the paintings of the people as my My music and she smiles, she smiles, she smiles, she smiles, she smiles, she smiles. 'Cause I don't need a real day, I need this rain on my skin. I don't need stained glass windows, I need the paintings of the people. It's well, I don't need a building.
That is my song. Wrote it.
Okay, up next we have a dear friend and my co-host of the other event that I do once a month. I do an all poetry reading at Fox Coffee House on the second Mondays, and my dear friend Murray here is my co-host for that. So let me see if I can make this tall enough for him. Probably still not tall enough, but go for it.
I do have stories to tell. Actually, I changed what I was going to do because of what Melanie said. So, because I was going to tell you the story, this is how I made it. Well, I was going to tell you the story about how I made a total fool of myself when I met my rock idol. But I think you're going to have to wait for next month for that one, because I have a poem, and those of you who know me as a poet have heard this one before, but it fits exactly with what Melanie was talking about. 7 years ago, I had a kidney transplant. I was on dialysis for 7 years before that. But at the time, I realized that, coincidentally or not, like every 12 years of my life, I ended up in the hospital for some reason or another. So this is a poem about a few of those. It's called, I Don't Need Tattoos, I Have Scars. 1, they permanently mark your skin. A friend of mine once gave me a therapeutic massage. Before she started, she gave me a chart of the body and asked me to mark where all my scars are. I have so many, I forgot a few. What about these, she said, pointing to my arm. When she was done, she asked me, with all the trauma your body has been through, I don't understand why you aren't in permanent pain. 2, they hurt when you get them. I was extremely hungover the day I trained the new cook how to cut steaks. I placed the hunk of meat on the cutting board, took out my knife. The first thing you do, I instructed, is cut like this, and sliced open my hand. Well, I amended, not exactly like that. 3, the best ones have great stories behind them. They finally caught the guy who ran me down and left me in a snowbank with a broken leg when he got divorced. It was an ugly divorce. Ooh, said his soon-to-be ex-wife, do I have some dirt on you? 4, they fade with time. I can hardly find that knife mark on my hand now. The settlement money was spent long ago. I told my friend, it helps if you tell the stories. Thank you.
I want to thank Made by Millworks and Sarah Tatro for letting me be part of such a cool event. Check out the website cadencecollective.net if you want to see Boris Ingles' photography or read more by Murray Thomas. To hear more from Melissa, find her on Facebook at Melissa Lussier Music. To read Clifton Snyder's The Beetle Bump, you can do something super cool like hit a local bookstore. Thanks for listening.
Colors keep building like little blocks to drape my mouth, and I can't draw a breath in, and I don't wanna let this one end. And this heart keeps beating like it's running from me, and my hands are so tired. Is that the stars peeling off their skin, or someone putting out this fire? But I guess it's another shade of violet slipping her fingers round my neck. when she'll appear. That's just fine. Ooh, they say, girl, you've been under so much stress. How you lie? I say that maybe my head or you see above water, but my soul slipping. And I've been waiting for an angel to call upon this emptiness and sitting on the train tracks, hoping for a ray. But I guess it's another shade of violet slipping her fingers round my neck, a deeper shade of misery, flooding with the pretense, another shade of violet running through my head, just that she won't confess a thing. Keeps me guessing when she'll appear. That's just violet. Ooh.
you. Did you recognize the song? Thank you. Thank you.